Today we're going to do a review of the work that we've been working on for the past week and a half or so. And then tomorrow you're going to have a graded assignment on this material. There were 3 things that we did. 2 of them were very closely related to each other. We found the GCF, we factored out the GCF, and then we factored trinomials. I'm going to do a couple examples of each. When you find the GCF, remember GCF stands for greatest common factor. Greatest means largest, common means that it's in all of them, and factor is something that divides into a number or exponent. So I have 130 and 45. I need to find the largest number that I can divide into both of those. In order to do that with a problem like this, I'm going to make a factor tree. 130 is 13 times 10. 10 is 2 times 5. I find the prime factors. 13, 2, and 5 are all prime numbers. And I stop there. Then I go to 45. 45 is 5 times 9. 5 is prime. 9 is 3 times 3. I make my 2 factor trees, and then I look at the prime numbers and I circle anything that is the same. I have a 5 in this factor tree, and I have a 5 in this one. Nothing else is the same. So my greatest common factor is 5. Here's a second example. I have 18x cubed and 54x squared. Let's look at the numbers first. 18 is 2 times 9. 2 is prime. 9 is 3 times 3. Now I have all prime factors. 54 is 6 times 9. I can factor 6 to 2 times 3 and 9 to 3 times 3. I have my 2 factor trees, and then I circle pairs that are the same. I have a 2 and a 2, a 3 and another 3. I have another pair of 3s that I can circle. So my greatest common factor, I'm going to only look at one tree now, and I'm going to multiply together 2 times 3 times 3, which gives me 18. 18 is the number that's in the GCF. Then I have to look at the variables. I have x cubed and x squared. The rule with the variables is that whatever the least of that variable is that you have in one of the terms is your GCF. I have x to the third and x squared. X squared is my lowest exponent. My GCF is 18x squared. We needed to find GCF so that we could factor it out. And a lot of these, the numbers were smaller. So for example, 12 and 8. I know that 2 divides into them, but I also know that 4 divides into them. So a lot of these problems, you could find the greatest common factor by just looking at the numbers and looking for common factors. 4 is the largest number that goes into 12 and 8. There's an x in one term, but no x in the other, so there's no x in my GCF. When you factor out the GCF, our goal is to end up with something in parentheses. The GCF goes in front of the parentheses, and then I divide each term by that GCF. 12 divided by 4 is 3x, minus 8 divided by 4, minus 2, and I close the parentheses. This is my factored form. Over here, I have 21x squared and 42. One thing to check with numbers is to see if the lower number goes into the larger one. 21 is a factor of 42. If the smaller number is a factor of the larger one, then that smaller number is your GCF. I have x squared, and I just have 42. So I can't take out any variables. I'm going to divide each of these by 21 and put the 21 in front of the parentheses. When I do that, the 21s cancel out, and I'm left with x squared plus 42 divided by 21 is 2, and I'm done. Down here, I have 30. I look at the numbers first, 33, 9, and 12. The only number that divides into 33, 9, and 12 is 3. Then I look at each variable separately. I have x squared, x, x. The least I have is x. That's x to the first. Look at the y's. I have y, y squared, and y. The least is a y by itself. So my GCF is 3xy. The GCF goes in front of the parentheses, and I divide each term by the GCF. 33 divided by 3 is 11. When I divide x squared by y, that's x squared over x to the first, I get x to the 2 minus 1 is x to the first. You subtract the exponents. Y divided by y cancels out because anything divided by itself is 1. Plus 9 divided by 3 is 3. The x's cancel. Y squared over y is y. Minus 12 divided by 3 is 4. X over x cancels. Y over y cancels. And that is my final answer in my factored form. The last thing we did was to factor trinomials. Remember, trinomials have 3 terms. And the rule was that when you factor trinomials, you always look for numbers that multiply to the last term and add to the coefficient of x. And actually, let's change this to that order because that's the way that we were writing it. So here, I want to find numbers that multiply to the constant. They're going to multiply to 70. Then they need to add to the coefficient of x, 17. I need numbers that multiply to 70, so I'm going to look for factors of 70. 1 times 70, 2 times 35, 5 times 14, and 7 times 10. I need to find the pair that adds up to 17. My factored form always has x's first in each factor. It's always the product of 2 binomials. And then the numbers that I found go in each factor. X plus 7 times x plus 10. It does not matter which order you write those in. Here, I have x squared minus 8x plus 12. My numbers need to multiply to my constant, 12, and add to the coefficient of x, which is negative 8. Do not forget the negative. So I look at factors of 12, 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4. And I want to find the pair that I can get to add to negative 8. 2 and 6 add to 8. If I make them both negative, negative 2 times negative 6 is still positive 12, but when I add them, I get negative 8. So my factored form is x minus 2, x minus 6. You're going to do some practice of all these types of problems on the review today, and then a graded assignment tomorrow.